I think we might be trending on this. Jim Harbaugh is denying the Michigan sign stealing scandal. What we want to talk about today is who are the worst cheaters. That'll ultimately be the fourth question. That'll be fourth down. That's why we call it four downs. But let's get to first down right now, because you may have not even heard the Kentucky news dump that happened on Friday.
Coop here. First down.
Thank you, Coop. What did Kentucky do? What NCAA violations did they commit?
Basically, they self-reported violations in 2022, where they reportedly had a series of players in 2021 and 2022 who, in the era of NIL, were paid to do work that they didn't do.
Okay, which this is happening everywhere.
It's happening everywhere. Yes, it's absolutely happening everywhere. But this one's a little bit worse because it was work assignments at the university's hospital. So, you're dealing with healthcare and things like that. And
But what were they supposed to do? Just show up and cheer up the kids?
Probably something like that. But yes, it was 11 players received impermissible benefits for work that they didn't do between spring of 2021 and March of 2022.
Okay. Remind us.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
What Michigan did.
Michigan, allegedly, because, Connor Stalions, a low-level employee who maybe was making $30,000, was obviously doing this on his own, guys, without any help from the upper management at Michigan whatsoever. Sure. But allegedly, the Michigan Wolverines put Connor Stalions up to go to football games and videotape opposing team signs to steal it, and not only use this for Michigan purposes, but to sabotage and give that information to other teams that were facing those teams that could be a threat to them in the college football playoff.
Which is frowned upon. What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Who should be more scared, Michigan or Kentucky?
Okay, this is actually really funny because whether or not you think it's right, Kentucky should be more scared because Kentucky did just vacate their wins. Only because the NCAA's investigation and enforcement team is so bad that Kentucky's self-reporting gets them more caught than Michigan. The NCAA investigation team, if they were running murder cases, there'd be OJs walking free every day.
I think that Michigan is in more trouble because Jim Harbaugh is gone. Because I think it would be harder to come down on him, and I think he sent a clear signal that things are awry in Ann Arbor, and that's why he wanted to get out of there. He wanted to get out of there for like 3 years, Caleb. So the fact that he wanted to get out of there, finally did, tells me that he thinks things could go south. A lot like the way Pete Carroll left Southern California.
Yeah. And wasn't Pete Carroll rejecting job offer after job offer? And then out of the blue, hey, I'll take one with the Seahawks.
Yes.
Yeah, no, and he bolted. That was actually that's a really funny comparison. I believe that, but I also believe that the NCAA now has even less power, and I don't think the NCAA wants to be in the business of probations anymore and postseason bans.
Well,
now they may be in the business of show calls.
Well, let me get to that.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
Does the NCAA have any power anymore?
No. Paul Feinbaum was on First Take yesterday and basically said nobody should worry. The NCAA is not going to come down on you. It doesn't matter what they have you doing. They can't do anything. The conferences are going to have to enforce this now. And let's be honest, the Big Ten's not going to enforce anything against one of their biggest cash cows in Michigan.
So does the SEC ever step up?
The SEC is a little bit different because of the Albert Means Logan Young thing. And I don't know if you guys know. And the reason that's so significant, Dave, you were there, you were covering it. That was a watershed moment for sanctions in college football, right? And in major programs. Greg Sankey was hired specifically to deal with compliance after that. Because, guys, it didn't just put Alabama on probation. It put Kentucky on probation, too. And it was a really serious problem. Major black eye for the league.
Mike Slive deserves a lot of credit for helping clean up the league, too.
He does. He absolutely does. It was that was just a watershed moment. But Alabama and Auburn both were getting in a lot of trouble in the 90s with ineligible players. I mean, go back and look at it, guys. They kept getting on probation. Like, it was one or the other. In Florida, up until Spurrier, always got on probation. Florida has about 5 SEC titles they should have had, but they were on probation those years, so they don't actually have them. So that was a big issue, and that was the final straw. They called Greg Sankey to clean up the league. The last real issue was Mississippi State with Jackie Sherrill. So, and then Mississippi State hired Sylvester Croom, got a 1-year bowl ban, and a year they weren't going to a bowl anyway, so they didn't care. But yes, the SEC has put a real emphasis on compliance ever since then. The Big Ten, here's the issue with the Big Ten, and they're kind of caught in a rock and a hard place. They were when the SEC started focusing on compliance, I will say, Dave, they called up to the Big Ten, which had been better on compliance traditionally. They had. I'll be fair to them on that. Here's the problem. The Big Ten, since the 2010s, has been caught in way worse scandals, and I mean crimes against humanity scandals, between Penn State, Michigan State, Rutgers. You're not looking at paying a player under the table anymore. You're looking at severe, severe crimes. And if the Big Ten were to step up, it would be only because this is another crime, not a crime against humanity, but another one that doesn't just involve ineligible pay for play. It involves doing something beyond. And at some point, I think the Big Ten is going to say, we can't have this anymore.
Somebody has to police something, right? Or do they?
Yes.
What is being policed now? I mean, you mentioned crimes against humanity. If the NCAA had any stones whatsoever, that would be what they're trying to fight against, because paying players is not a thing anymore. Transferring is not a thing anymore. They can't do anything with tampering. There's no way that you can run down everybody's phone records to see if they tampered with another player in a transfer. I mean, what are they left to enforce? What's enforceable? I mean,
nothing.
You can come to campus anytime you want to. It's not like there was the no contact. I mean, there are some no contact periods that you have to follow, but I mean, what is to enforce? What's the crime?
There is nothing that they can enforce at this point. And here's the thing. Crimes against humanity, I don't look at those as a failure of the NCAA. I look at it as a failure of the legal system. I cannot believe Pennsylvania had a law didn't have a law requiring you to report child sex abuse to law enforcement. How is that not a law? Like, like, I don't know about Tennessee but like, I know where I live. Like, if I witness child sex abuse and I don't report it, I face charges myself. Like, that's a big deal. You're required to report it.
I totally agree. And I just, if you can pay players, if you can transfer easily, let's take it outside of, for a second, of the crimes against humanity, as you called it, which it was. Just in terms of football, what can they enforce?
They can't enforce anything. That's why Charlie Baker, by the way, fully backed Michigan last year the whole time. He knew that they couldn't enforce. That's the NCAA president, for those who don't know. He knew they couldn't enforce anything. Here's what the NCAA is in the process of doing. They are in the process of streamlining NIL to try to create a national standard. You're not going to get, but again, the elephant in the room with that is Title IX and the antitrust laws. They are in conflict with each other. Both of them are in constant conflict. So the minute they get streamlined, you're violating one of those laws, and you don't know which one. So I don't know what they can do. I do think this whole, again, you're right. The weird part about Kentucky vacating the wins, I'll say this. Is this even illegal anymore? Like, the fact that Tennessee took out the NCAA with its NIL lawsuit, how is the NCAA even allowed to make you vacate wins for doing something in the NIL age that you didn't really do? Like, for getting paid for something you didn't really get paid for.
Did they just agree to do it themselves? Did they just...
That's what it sounds like. Kentucky just agreed to do it themselves. Like, fine, we'll take away the wins.
That shows you how much they care about football. If that was basketball, they wouldn't take away those wins. They wouldn't vacate a national championship.
No, they wouldn't. And we're talking one of their best seasons ever, 2021. They went 10-3 that year. That's like, Kentucky doesn't go 10-3, guys. So they vacated like one of their banner years in football. But here's my hot take. I actually think that's worse than the Michigan scandal, because I don't think the Michigan scandal, and I'm going to say this, and it's
Caleb.
Hold on, let me finish. Every other league, you can videotape your opponents at games and steal their signs. It's only not allowed in college football. If someone steals your signs, they still have to execute the plays, and you should be smart enough to recognize when they get hold of your signs. I still to this day blame. I don't blame. I think they gave the information to South Carolina. I blame Josh Heupel for not adjusting.
Well, adjusting during the game with sign stealing is pretty darn difficult. I mean, you can do it, but
switch all of your signs. You should have a second level of signs that you switch all up.
Yeah, I think you should be able to make a switch at halftime. I agree with you, but when do you realize your signs are being stolen, or do you just think that they're guessing right? I mean, that's the issue with it. It's like the old, when you play video games and your eyes would creep over and Tecmo Bowl to the opponents and see.
Oh yes, yeah. That's always the problem with video games. You can see the playbook they pull up when you're on the same screen. My issue with that, Dave, is that Michigan sign stealing was so blatant. That's how they got caught in the first place, because a bunch of teams were like, how did they know what we were doing?
Caleb, Michigan's way worse. I mean, come on, let's think about this for a second. That's a conspiracy. Connor Stalions didn't do all that by himself. I mean, somebody else helped him, and I wouldn't be surprised if it went as high as a recruiting coordinator or they call them player personnel guys, so they don't take up a coaching space anymore. That would be pretty high up. I know Jim Harbaugh is not dumb enough to do something like that, but somebody else could.
No, but Jim Harbaugh was facilitating it.
You think he was facilitating it?
Yes. Sherrone Moore, his offensive coordinator, deleted 52 text messages to Connor Stalions.
Okay, well then Michigan should have the hammer drop down on them.
Why? They don't have any evidence.
Well, they have the deleted text messages that
by definition of being deleted, there's no evidence. They don't have the text messages.
Okay. I watch way too many crime dramas, but do you know if he has an Apple or an Android?
Yes, but crime dramas.
Because Android, you can go back and find deleted items you can't on an iPhone.
But here's the thing. Crime dramas have federal investigators and local investigators. They all have more power than the NCAA. Here's my thing, Dave. We're talking about Michigan doing something that I don't think should be a violation. Like, again, in the NFL, in the Super Bowl, for those who don't know, the reason the Broncos got waxed by the Seahawks in that Super Bowl where Peyton Manning had the greatest offensive year ever and then lost 43-8, we all remember that. It's because Richard Sherman just came out and said it. He said, yeah, no, we stole Peyton Manning's signs. We figured them all out. We videotaped them. We figured it all out. We stole them and we used them. And he said, had Peyton Manning switched them up at halftime, he'd have come back and beat us because we were all in on the signs we knew we had. Nobody thought that was cheating. Everybody thought that, oh, impressive. You guys did your due diligence to figure out Peyton Manning signs. And I'm thinking, shouldn't the same be applied here? Like, don't you respect Michigan for doing their due diligence?
There's not a lot I respect about Michigan right now.